The movie version of the hit musical Wicked soared at the box office this winter, and among its 10 nominations, one is for costume designer Paul Tazewell. Senior arts correspondent Jeffrey Brown starts our coverage of Oscar nominees this year with this report. It's part of our Arts and Culture series, Canvas.
It's a visually spectacular world, intended to feel both familiar and fresh.
The Wicked Witch of the West is dead.
For costume designer Paul Tazewell, Wicked is an enormous canvas of characters and colors, materials in motion. And it's the biggest thing he's ever been involved in.
It's a blast, one, and it is my life. It is the way that I communicate. I mean, as a painter would, it is my language. And it is my means of being creative.
We met recently at Steiner Studios, a film production complex in Brooklyn, New York. And he told us that for all the huge scale, the key is still through his designs and working with director John Chu and actors, most of all Cynthia Erivo as Elphaba and Ariana Grande as Glinda, to help create characters, not only their outer clothing, but their inner emotional life.
My focus is who these characters are and how they dress themselves and how to create a world that makes sense within itself and provides a magical environment for this story to exist within. I mean, so I'm stepping into their shoes. You know, if I'm working adjacent to...
Actually, they're stepping into your shoes.
Well, there is that as well. Both.
When it comes to American cultural history, these are very big shoes to fill, beginning with the books, the first in 1900 by L. Frank Baum.
But if you please, what are munchkins?
The classic 1939 film that's taken generations over the rainbow.
Okay, Dorothy and Toto, seems like we're gonna have to find our own Yellow Brick Road.
And The Wiz, a 1970s retelling on stage and film through the contemporary Black experience. Starting in 1995, a new series of books by Gregory Maguire conjured a kind of backstory and revisionist history. It turns out we didn't really know the Wicked Witch or Elphaba after all. That spawned the amazingly successful Broadway musical, running 21 years and counting. And now the new film.
I acknowledge all of those as I'm designing it, but with the intent of creating new images, new icons, new ways of seeing who these characters are, and a new way of telling the story. And I delight in it.
In fact, The Wiz was the first show Tazewell designed. He also acted in it as a high school student in Akron, Ohio, where his mother taught him to sew.
What's your name, man? Alexander Hamilton.
He went on to a hugely successful career in theater design, notably including Hamilton, for which he won a Tony. And most recently, Suffs, which brought another Tony nomination. He won a television Emmy for NBC's 2015 The Wiz Live. And the first Oscar nomination for Steven Spielberg's 2021 film version of West Side Story. You're grabbing images just on the internet, whatever.
That's right, that viscerally speak to me. They could be abstract, they could be, you know, random, but collectively they start to create a world.
For Wicked, Tazewell has taken past icons, the witch's hat, for example, and made them his own. He created a mashup of old and new fashions. Look to the art of one of history's greatest graphic artists, M.C. Escher, and incorporated patterns in nature, including the swirl of the tornado, or twister, so indelible in the 1939 film. He showed me an early plastic 3D model of a crystal slipper made for one of the characters, the swirl pattern appearing throughout.
From the moment the witch was born.
It's a detail that required weeks for Tazewell and his team to experiment with, design, and make. I, as the viewer, seeing the film, I wouldn't know all that, right?
And my hope is that, and that was for all of the details of Oz and what we were creating for Wicked, was that it becomes immersive, that you believe it so much that you're drawn into this world, and you know, there's a suspension of disbelief.
Tazewell says he's always bringing his own personal connections to the story and characters he's working on. He brought up the example of Elphaba, an outsider in Munchkin Land, a different color from the rest,
Where did you come from?
uncertain of her own place and shunned by others.
What I bring to the event is my own life experience and how I walk through life as well. I have a direct emotional relationship to that, being a black man walking through life in America. So
you
decisions,
connect in that sense.
Absolutely. So decisions around how she emotionally presents herself, what her intention is, I have to build some kind of connection in order to have an honest take on what a character might wear.
There's also another kind of history at stake in Tazewell's Oscar nomination. In 2019, Ruth Carter became the first black costume designer to win an Oscar for her work in Black Panther. Tazewell would be the first black man to win.
The number of people of color that I experienced coming up in this business
Was
and there were just
minimal.
There were just very few, and which is why it's so important for me to be a face that is visible and out there for other people to see me doing it.
Tazewell is also seeking to make a case for the role of the costume designer more broadly, something he says is often not well understood and has implications for such things as pay equity within his industry.
What has become more of a priority is to be expansive in a way that is not only identified as a costume designer, but is identified as a creative artist. And I've tried to turn up the volume on, indeed, what it is that we do and the power that we have as costume designers to create character. Our contribution is huge towards that.
Paul Tazewell vies for an Oscar, one of 10 nominations overall for Wicked, on March 2nd. For the PBS NewsHour, I'm Jeffrey Brown in Brooklyn, New York.